Ladies and gentlemen, success is not something we stumble into. It's something we grow into. And the seed of that growth is the mindset we cultivate every single day. If you want to change your income, your opportunities, your lifestyle start by changing the way you think and the way you speak. Your philosophy shapes your future because it acts as the internal compass that directs every choice you make, every reaction you have, and every opportunity you recognize or overlook. Most people believe success begins with resources, intelligence, or talent, but long before any of those come into play, there is the mindset that interprets the world. Two people can face the same circumstances. One sees an obstacle, the other sees a challenge worth mastering. The difference is not luck, it is philosophy. Your philosophy is built from the ideas you accept, the conversations you engage in, the books you read, and the thoughts you allow to repeat in your mind. It quietly writes the script for how you behave. And over time, your behavior writes the story of your life. When someone has a limited philosophy, they automatically limit what is possible. They underestimate themselves, underestimate their potential, and underestimate the resources available to them. A limited philosophy convinces people that life is fixed, that circumstances control destiny, and that effort rarely pays off. It creates a quiet resignation, a belief that things are just the way they are, and once that becomes the philosophy, the future shrinks to match it. Every choice becomes conservative, every thought becomes defensive, and every ambition becomes small. A weak philosophy always leads to weak results, no matter how much effort someone puts in, because effort applied in the wrong direction simply accelerates frustration. On the other hand, expanding your philosophy expands your future. When you begin to believe that growth is possible, you begin to act like growth is necessary. You read more, question your assumptions, you look for lessons in every experience. Instead of asking, why is life so hard? You begin asking, what can I learn here? That single shift turns setbacks into teachers and turns challenges into invitations. A strong philosophy doesn't deny difficulty. It simply refuses to surrender to it. It reminds you that your life is not shaped by what happens to you, but by how you interpret what happens. Everything improves when philosophy improves. Your attitude changes first, and attitude influences behavior. You approach your work with more energy, your relationships with more intention, and your goals with more seriousness. Opportunities that used to pass by unnoticed start appearing because you finally have the eyes to see them. You begin surrounding yourself with people who think bigger, act bigger, and expect more from themselves. Their influence strengthens your philosophy even more, creating a cycle where growth fuels growth. This is why it is essential to guard the input that shapes your thinking. What you watch, what you read, who you listen to, and who you spend time with all become architects of your philosophy. If you surround yourself with small thinkers, you will begin shrinking to fit their worldview. But if you expose yourself to people who stretch your thinking, who challenge your excuses, who model discipline and ambition, your own philosophy will rise to match the level of thinking around you. When your philosophy rises, your life must follow. Transforming your thinking is the first real transformation you will ever make, because everything else in your life is a reflection of the thoughts you consistently hold. People often try to change their circumstances without changing the mindset that produced those circumstances, and they end up repeating the same patterns with new surroundings. A change in thinking is the root change. Everything else is a branch. When you shift from limitation-focused thinking to possibility-focused thinking, you begin to interpret the world through a lens that reveals opportunities that were previously invisible. The human mind filters reality based on what it expects to find. If you expect obstacles, you will see obstacles everywhere. If you expect possibilities, you will see solutions that others miss entirely. This is why two people can look at the same situation and walk away with completely different conclusions. Each one is seeing through the filter of their dominant thoughts. Your thinking influences your energy, and your energy influences your behavior. When your mind is filled with doubt, fear, or scarcity-based thoughts, your actions become hesitant and timid. You become overly cautious, overly self-protective, and unwilling to take the risks necessary for growth. But when your mind is filled with thoughts of potential and capability, You start to move with a different posture. You speak with more confidence. You take initiative. You approach challenges with curiosity instead of avoidance. The internal shift creates an external shift, and people notice it long before you do. Much of the limitation people experience is self-imposed, and it originates in the habitual thoughts they allow to replay in their minds. Thoughts like, I'm not ready, I've never done this before, or people like me don't succeed in things. Like this quietly drain ambition and reinforce the belief that staying small is safer than trying. But thoughts are choices, and every choice creates a direction. When you begin choosing thoughts like, I can learn this, I can grow into this, or there is always a way, you begin walking in a direction that leads to progress. Changing your thinking does not mean ignoring difficulties. It means refusing to allow difficulties to become definition. One of the most powerful ways to transform your thinking is to challenge the assumptions that have shaped your beliefs. Most people carry ideas that were handed to them by their environment, their upbringing, or their past experiences, and they accept them without examination. But when you pause and ask, is this belief helping me or holding me back? You begin to reclaim authority over your inner world. You start replacing old thought patterns with more empowering ones, and these new patterns start shaping new results. Your thinking also determines your emotional climate. Thoughts of scarcity create anxiety. Thoughts of failure create fear. Thoughts of inadequacy create hesitation. But thoughts of possibility create hope. Thoughts of progress create momentum. Thoughts of capability create confidence. Your emotional life is simply a shadow cast by your dominant thoughts. And as you shift the thoughts, the emotional landscape shifts with it. Transforming your thinking requires repetition, exposure, and intention. Repetition means practicing better thoughts until they feel natural. Exposure means surrounding yourself with ideas and people who think bigger than you currently do. Intention means becoming conscious of the thoughts you allow to stay in your mind. When you consistently do these three things, your thinking rises to a new level. And as your thinking rises, your life must rise with it. Your words are not just expressions of what you feel. They are architects of what you become. Every sentence you speak reinforces a belief, and that belief eventually becomes a behavior. People often underestimate the power of language because words seem so simple, so ordinary, so harmless. But words shape perspective, and perspective shapes action. When you say something repeatedly, your mind begins to accept it as truth. And once the mind accepts something as truth, it starts shaping your decisions to align with that belief. This is why careful attention to language is essential for success. The person who constantly says, I can't, is training their mind to avoid effort. The person who constantly says, I always struggle, is programming themselves to expect difficulty. But the person who speaks in terms of growth, possibility, and progress is creating an inner climate where success becomes the natural outcome. Words influence identity, and identity drives long-term behavior. When someone says, I'm not good with money, they are not just describing a habit, they are defining themselves. The moment you define yourself with limiting language, you lock yourself into a smaller future. But when you shift your language to, I'm learning to manage my money better, you open the door to change. One sentence shuts the future down, the other invites it in. Many people think they need a breakthrough in circumstances, but what they really need is a breakthrough in vocabulary. The language you choose becomes the story you live. Your words also influence your emotional state. Speaking in negative or fearful terms amplifies those emotions. Saying everything is going wrong makes your challenges feel heavier. Saying nothing ever works out for me creates a sense of defeat that drains your motivation. But when you speak with optimism and intention, your emotions begin to shift. Phrases like, I'm figuring this out, I'm making progress, or can handle this step by step generate calm, clarity, and resolve. Language becomes a tool for emotional self-leadership. You don't deny reality. You simply refuse to frame it in a way that strips you of power. Your words influence how others respond to you as well. When you speak with clarity, confidence, and purpose, people take you seriously. They are more willing to help you, partner with you, and trust you. But when your language is filled with doubt, hesitation, or negativity. Others feel that uncertainty. Words create a social atmosphere. They either attract or repel opportunities. A confident voice opens doors long before credentials do. A negative voice closes doors long before mistakes do. One of the most important disciplines you can develop is the discipline of intentional speech. This doesn't mean pretending everything is perfect. It means speaking in a way that aligns with your goals rather than your fears. Instead of saying, this is impossible, you say, this is challenging, but I can find a way. Instead of saying, I never get good breaks, you say, I'm preparing myself for the opportunities coming my way. Instead of saying, I'm stuck, you say, I'm in the process of changing. With every statement, you are either building a pathway forward or erecting a wall in front of you. Your words also shape your internal expectations. The mind listens to what you say, and over time, it begins creating alignment between your speech and your reality. When you speak progress, your mind looks for progress. When you speak potential, your mind looks for potential. When you speak capability, your mind looks for ways to act capable. This shift in expectation is subtle at first, but it compounds over time. Soon you find yourself thinking differently, acting differently, and receiving differently because you chose to speak differently. Your words create a blueprint for how your mind operates, and over time, that blueprint becomes the structure of your life. Every phrase you speak carries instructions, either instructions that strengthen you or instructions that weaken you. Most people speak without awareness, unaware that their casual comments are shaping their confidence, their expectations, and their future outcomes. When you continually say things like, I'm always overwhelmed, I never catch a break, or that's just my luck, your mind absorbs those statements as facts and begins adjusting your behavior to match them. You start approaching tasks with hesitation instead of boldness, seeing problems instead of possibilities, and expecting difficulty instead of opportunity. Your language becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy because the mind is designed to follow the dominant messages it receives. Words not only direct your behavior, they also reveal and reinforce your identity. Identity is powerful because you will always act in alignment with who you believe you are. If you tell yourself, I'm terrible at planning, you won't plan well. If you tell yourself, I'm not the kind of person who succeeds, you will unconsciously sabotage progress. But when you shift your speech toward identity-based empowerment statements like, I'm becoming more disciplined, I'm learning to manage challenges, or I'm someone who completes what I start, you begin reshaping the identity that guides your choices. You don't need to pretend to be perfect. You only need to speak in a direction that supports growth rather than limits it. The words you choose either build a bigger version of you or shrink you into a smaller one. Your emotional state is also heavily influenced by your language. Words can stir anxiety or create calm, drain motivation, or build momentum. When you verbalize frustration repeatedly, the emotion intensifies. When you declare defeat, your energy drops. But when you speak from a place of intention, saying things like, I can take this one step at a time, they handled difficult things before, or I'm making progress even if it's slow, you generate resilience. You begin managing your emotions instead of being controlled by them. Speech is one of the fastest ways to shift your internal environment. Even a single sentence can change how you feel, and how you feel often determines whether you take action or remain stuck. Your words influence not only your inner world, but also how others perceive and respond to you. People trust and follow those who speak with conviction, clarity, and purpose. Confident communication signals leadership, competence, and reliability. Uncertain or negative communication signals doubt, disorganization, or lack of direction. Your language becomes part of your personal brand long before people see your results. When you speak with intention, you attract support, opportunities, and collaboration because people naturally gravitate toward those who sound anchored in purpose. This isn't about pretending or performing. It's about aligning your speech with the level of confidence and clarity that leads others to believe in you. Intentional speech is a discipline, and like any discipline, it improves with practice. It begins with awareness, listening to the phrases you repeat and questioning whether they support the future you want. It continues with substitution, replacing habitual negative statements with constructive ones. And it strengthens through consistency, training yourself to speak in a way that builds your mindset rather than undermining it. The more you practice speaking with purpose, the more your mind, emotions, habits, and relationships begin to align with that higher level of communication. Words are not just sounds, they are tools, and when used intentionally, they can reshape your entire trajectory. Discipline is the quiet force that separates intention from achievement, the invisible thread that connects dreams to outcomes. It is not dramatic, loud, or glamorous. It is built through consistent, often unnoticed decisions made when no one is watching. Most people have desires, hopes, and ambitions, but desire without discipline is simply wishful thinking. Discipline is what turns a wish into a plan and a plan into progress. It is the steady hand that guides your actions, even when motivation fades. And motivation always fades. The excitement of a new goal eventually wears off, and what remains is the daily choice to do what needs to be done whether you feel like it or not. Discipline does not demand perfection. It demands persistence. Small actions repeated consistently outperform massive efforts applied sporadically. Reading a few pages every day compounds into wisdom. Saving a small amount regularly grows into security. Practicing a skill daily turns into mastery. The power of discipline lies in its compounding effect. Just as small errors in judgment repeated over time lead to disappointment, small disciplines repeated over time lead to success. Every disciplined act sends a message to your mind: I keep my promises. And when you trust yourself to follow through, your confidence grows. Confidence built on discipline is far more stable than confidence built on emotion. One of the challenges with discipline is that its rewards are not immediate. Working out today doesn't transform your body tomorrow. Studying today doesn't instantly change your career. Investing today doesn't make you wealthy next week. Because the results take time, people underestimate the importance of consistency. They quit in the gap between effort and reward. But discipline requires faith in the future. It is the decision to plant seeds long before the harvest appears. It is the understanding that progress is often invisible at first. Beneath the surface long before it becomes visible to others. The disciplined person keeps going even when nothing seems to be changing, because they know that something is always changing inside them. Discipline also acts as a filter for choices. Without it, decisions are driven by moods, impulses, or convenience. With it, decisions are guided by values, goals, and long-term vision. A disciplined mind asks, does this move me forward or hold me back? And acts accordingly. Discipline strengthens your ability to delay gratification, to trade momentary comfort for meaningful progress. It helps you choose study over distraction, health over indulgence, growth over stagnation. The more you practice discipline, the easier these choices become, because discipline itself becomes a habit. Another aspect of discipline is accountability, not to others, but to yourself. When you set a standard and hold yourself to it, you build integrity. You begin to trust your own word. And that internal trust is powerful. People who lack discipline often lack self-trust because they have repeatedly broken commitments to themselves. But each disciplined action repairs that trust and builds momentum. Discipline becomes a source of personal strength, a reminder that you are in control of your actions, your habits, and ultimately your destiny. Discipline does not eliminate struggle. It gives you the strength to endure it. It does not remove obstacles. It equips you to overcome them. It does not guarantee an easy path. It guarantees that you will stay on the path long enough to see results. Over time, discipline becomes less about what you must do and more about who you are becoming. It becomes part of your identity, shaping your character, sharpening your focus, and elevating your standards. The idea of increasing your value begins with understanding that the marketplace rewards contribution, not time. Time is equal for everyone, but value is not. Two people can work the same number of hours and walk away with entirely different results, because one has developed skills, knowledge, and habits that create greater impact. Value is the difference maker. When you focus on increasing your value, your opportunities expand, your income grows, and your influence strengthens, not because you demand more, but because you have become more. You cannot pursue success directly. You must attract it by becoming a person capable of producing it. Value grows through intentional learning. The person who continuously educates themselves will always rise above the person who relies solely on old knowledge. The world changes quickly, and those who adapt, study, and evolve stay ahead. Reading, taking courses, observing mentors, practicing skills, exploring new ideas. These are investments in yourself that compound over time. Every skill you acquire increases your usefulness. Every insight you gain improves your decision-making. Every bit of knowledge you apply enhances the results you produce. When your value rises, you no longer compete at the same level. You elevate to a field with fewer competitors because fewer people commit to continual self-improvement. Increasing your value also requires developing qualities that make you reliable, consistent, and trustworthy. Skills are essential, but character multiplies their impact. Discipline, integrity, patience, emotional maturity, communication, and resilience are invisible assets that significantly influence how others perceive your worth. People want to work with, promote, and invest in those who demonstrate responsibility and stability. A talented person without dependability becomes a liability, while a moderate, skilled person with strong character becomes indispensable. Value is never just about what you can do. It is also about who you are while doing it. Another way to increase your value is to solve bigger problems. The size of the problem you solve often determines the size of the reward you receive. Simple problems create small rewards. Complex problems create substantial rewards. Instead of avoiding challenges, look for ways to take on responsibility that require more thinking, more creativity, or more leadership. Learn to handle pressure without losing composure. Learn to navigate uncertainty with clarity. Learn to bring solutions where others bring excuses. The moment you become someone who can be trusted with difficult situations, your value increases dramatically. Your value also expands when you learn to communicate effectively. Many people have great ideas, but they lack the ability to articulate them clearly, confidently, and persuasively. Communication is a multiplier skill. It enhances every other ability you possess, whether you are presenting, negotiating, leading, advising, or simply connecting. The clarity of your communication elevates the perception of your competence. Improving how you speak, write, listen, and express your ideas increases your influence and positions you as someone capable of leading and inspiring others. Increasing your value is a continuous process, not a one-time effort. It requires curiosity, humility, and the willingness to stretch beyond what is comfortable. It requires viewing yourself as an ongoing project, always capable of refinement and expansion. When you commit to becoming a more capable thinker, a more skilled professional, and a more grounded individual, your value steadily rises. As your value rises, your results improve naturally because the marketplace responds to growth, consistency, and excellence. Your environment plays a powerful and often underestimated role in shaping the direction of your life. The people you spend time with, the conversations you entertain, the habits you observe, and the attitudes you absorb all contribute to the mental atmosphere you live in each day. Without realizing it, you adapt to the standards around you. If the people near you operate with low expectations, you begin to shrink your own ambitions. If they complain constantly, you start to echo their negativity. If they avoid responsibility, you may find yourself doing the same. Human beings are naturally influenced creatures, and environment is one of the strongest forces guiding behavior, mindset, and outcomes. You may believe your willpower is strong enough to resist the influence of others, but over time, environment always has the final word. This is why the direction of your life is deeply tied to the direction of the people you associate with. If you surround yourself with those who think small, you will unconsciously limit your own potential to fit in. But when you place yourself among people who think big, who push themselves, who take responsibility, who strive to grow, you begin raising your standards to match theirs. Growth-oriented environments expand your vision. They challenge your excuses. They introduce you to ideas you might never have discovered on your own. They normalize ambition, discipline, and excellence, making them feel not only possible but expected. When excellence becomes normal, you naturally rise to meet it. Your environment does more than influence your actions. it affects your identity. The people around you subtly shape who you believe you are. If you constantly hear discouraging words, you start to doubt yourself. If you spend time in environments where laziness or mediocrity is accepted, you begin redefining what is acceptable for your life. But if you immerse yourself in groups that value continuous improvement, accountability, and high standards, you start to see yourself as someone capable of achieving more. Identity shifts happen slowly, but they are powerful. Your inner self-image adjusts to reflect the company you keep. Your environment also determines the direction of your conversations, and conversations shape thinking. If your daily discussions revolve around problems, gossip, and limitations, your thinking becomes narrow and reactive. But if your conversations revolve around goals, strategies, opportunities, and lessons learned, your mind stays sharp and forward-focused. Conversation is one of the fastest ways to change your mindset because it forces you to articulate ideas, consider new perspectives, and internalize higher-level thinking. The more you engage in conversations that stretch your mind, the more you outgrow environments that hold you back. Being intentional about your environment does not mean cutting people off or judging them. It means being aware of how much influence you allow others to have. You can care for people without adopting their habits. You can support people without living by their limitations. The key is to place yourself in spaces where growth is encouraged and where the behaviors you admire are demonstrated consistently. Seek mentors, peers, and friends whose lives reflect the qualities you want to develop. Spend time with people who inspire you, challenge you, and remind you of what you're capable of. Even limited exposure to the right people can redirect the trajectory of your thinking and therefore the trajectory of your life. Your environment ultimately acts as the wind, either pushing you forward or holding you back. Choosing it deliberately becomes one of the greatest steps you can take towards shaping a better future.